And now, today it gives me great pleasure to introduce our presentation, The Making of Reel Wāhine of Hawai, with Vera Zambonelli, Shirley Thompson, Meleanna Meyer, and Joy Chong-Stannard. This is being co-sponsored to show the kind of range of interest by Hamilton Library, the Spark and Matsunaga Institute for Peace and Conflict Resolution, the Academy for Creative Media, Hui Aina Pilipili, Native Hawaiian Initiative, the Hawaii Nui Akea School of Hawaiian Knowledge, the School of Communications, the Center for Oral History, and the Departments of Ethnic Studies, Political Science, and Women and Gender and Sexuality Studies, and the University of Hawaii West Oahu Academy for Creative Media. Many interesting and productive organizations all. I'll give you a bit of a sense of where we're coming from on this, although the participants will definitely fill us in on this. What intrigued us at the center about setting up this event was, first of all, we knew it would be interesting because we've done a number of sessions in the past with Vera Zambonelli, who is the executive director of Hawaiian Women in Filmmaking and a lecturer at the Academy for Creative Media, West Oahu. What she also is the co-producer of a series and director of 4 portraits within the Reel Wāhine of Hawai, which is a series of biographical documentaries about women documentary makers and women filmmakers here in Hawaii. What intrigued us was, and this is in part personal, 2 of the people who are going to be speaking today, Meleanna Meyer and especially Joy Chong-Stannard, I have worked with on various projects over the years. And in fact, with Joy, I've co-produced 6 documentaries with a strong biographical focus. What interested us most of all here was that these documentary makers who have done really, really fine biographical work in their documentaries have suddenly shifted from behind the camera because Vera and her people, Shirley, have put them in front of the camera as now the subject of a biography after years of making documentary biographies. So what we decided to do was put together a panel in which we had women documentary filmmakers who were intimately familiar with being the subject of documentaries as well as the maker of documentaries, all with a biographical focus. And so that's what we're going to be doing today. And we have, as I've already mentioned, Vera, Shirley Thompson, a passionate storyteller and a seasoned documentary producer, writer, and editor, and the co-producer of the Reel Wāhine of Hawai series and someone who has directed 4 of the portraits. So we've got 2 of the directors here within the series. But we also have Meleanna Meyer, visual artist and filmmaker known for her documentaries which focus on building pride, understanding, and support for Hawaiian families and culture. And we also have Joy Chong-Stannard, live television and documentary director whose career spans 40 years in public television. Many of you will know Joy from the fact that she does Island Insights and has been regularly doing that series for PBS for years, but she's also an extensive maker of documentaries in the same way that Meleanna Meyer is as well. So I'm going to hand this over to Vera, and it gives me great pleasure to introduce this session on the making of Reel Wāhine of Hawai.
Aloha, Craig, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for inviting us to talk about the Reel Wāhine of Hawai. Thank you, Craig, Paige, and Zoe, and the Center for Biographical Research for giving us this opportunity to share this work of love and passion and with you all in the audience. It's so nice to see so many of you. And yes, this is one of the things that actually came out of COVID, the ability and the possibility to be in the same space across spaces so that we can have these conversations no matter where we are and find the time and space. And so, my name is Vera. I am the co-producer of the series with Shirley. Series actually at its 3rd season. So right now we have 18 short films produced, and we will be addressing a little bit about this series as a whole, why we decided to start this series, why we felt it was important to document the lives and accomplishments of Wāhine filmmakers here in Hawaii, told by women, but also where we are, because also the series evolved, in 3 iterations. We learned a lot, and we would love to share that with you. And so that will be a little bit about how we are going to start today's conversation, and then we'll invite Meleanna and Joy to share about their work, but also how they felt about being involved in this process, just like as Craig was noticing, being documentary storyteller themselves, when the lens shift on you, how does it feel, and what you learn through the process and experience. And so from the get-go, Reel Wāhine of Hawai really was born out of the necessity to document stories that will likely remain untold. This was really what compelled Shirley and I to produce this series. Generally, women's stories are left untold, not documented, and we felt that with so much talent, so much creativity, and so much gift in Hawaii, we needed to do something, and that's how we got activated, and we start series number 1, and we really wanted to do something that also not only document a story that would have remained untold, but intentionally displacing the male gaze that characterize the industry. And as a matter of fact, we had women not only in front of the camera, but also behind the camera. As a matter of fact, all the crews are Wāhine. So it was also our intentions to redress the gender inequity that characterize the industry, because we really believe that being involved in the creative process really affects what we see on the screen. And so it was a matter for us of telling the stories, these very compelling stories of all the achievement and contributions that established as well as emerging filmmakers are making today, but also making sure that there was a representations behind the scene as well in terms of Wāhine telling the stories of Wāhine. And so this was, that the intention, the purpose of creating this series with Shirley, and here we are, 3 seasons after, and I don't know, maybe Shirley, if you wanna tell us a little bit, share with everybody else about the process of how we actually ended up selecting the cast and the crew.
Well, Vera, should we go ahead and, are you going to show the trailer? Because maybe we can show the trailer.
There was something
and then
that
people
I was
can
going to
see
forget
what we're talking about.
So thank you for the wonderful reminder. I was like, I want to share why we do this. So let's actually get a glimpse of the season 3. And I'm going to share that trailer right now. And here we have it.
We all have like a voice inside ourselves that want to say something about this world or want the world to take notice. I think film is a wonderful way to express that.
Filmmaking allows us the capacity to, in our own small way, influence the outcome that we strive for.
Stand by in 3, 2, 1.
I don't know if filmmakers ever die or retire. They just keep going. Television is perfect for someone like me. I was a lover of history.
We are not American. We will die as Hawaiians. We will never be Americans.
They're giving you their words, they're giving you their images. You have a lot of power when you're a video documentarian. Have to be humble.
Or do we want her to? It's been a couple of years since I've been able to make a feature, and it's not because I haven't been trying.
It's a profession in which there's rejection, and you have to believe enough in your story and in yourself that you push through.
They are love letters to the planet, love letters to the culture.
We were part of a movement, not just documentarians, and we speak from that point of view.
I make my films through the lens that is my Kanaka worldview.
The healing part as a woman is to be able to say, I want to do that.
Being able to do my own work, I'm more confident now.
Thank you for the reminder, Shirley.
Sure, of course.
And also, I want to acknowledge that we have one more Wāhine feature in this series, John Lander, here in the audience. So thank you for joining, John.
Yes,
so
and
back to the
also,
cast.
sure. We, you know, for us, it's this is a way for us to get to, you know, work with filmmakers that we really admire, whose work we've seen for years and years, or emerging new makers who are coming onto the scene, who, you know, whose work really excites us. And so for us, it's delving into other filmmakers' creative process, what makes them tick, what makes them choose the subjects that they choose, why they feel so passionately that they want to put the, you know, the hard work that it takes to make these films and tell the stories that they want to tell. And so that's always where we start in terms of choosing the 6 that will be profiled each season. So, so we make 6 short films about 6 women filmmakers in Hawaii each year. We've got season 4 is already in pre-production. So we hope to continue making more of these, funding permitting, as we always say. And then, you know, we're also very intentional about representing our community in all ways, in terms of the diversity of voices. And so that's another factor that factors in. But first and foremost, they're really, you know, superb filmmakers, and we want to hear more about their process. And so in doing that, it might be a good time to ask Joy a question.
So, Joy.
You first or me?
We can ask certainly questions. Actually, if we may want to ask first to Meleanna, and sorry because of that, because I know that she may have to leave shortly. We would like to ask both of you actually, what are generally the kind of subject that you have been working on in your films, and why? And so that bring us about your identity as a filmmakers. And then if you can actually start addressing the questions that Craig posed earlier, like how did it feel to actually shift the camera on yourselves? So type of films and documentaries that you may have done, the reasons behind those choices, and how it felt to become the subject of a documentary.
Dr. Nepal?
Meleanna, you should go first because I know you have a time issue here. Why don't you go ahead?
I just made it go away. Let's just enjoy.
Okay then. Okay, let's stop starting.
I overbooked and here I am. So, but we're finished. That was supposed to be done at noon. So blessings. Let's talk to the real filmmaker over here, Joy.
Oh, no. You know, I select my subjects primarily because I'm really interested in women that have not been recognized or are largely forgotten, because I'm a real history buff. I'm a history major, and I think giving voice and remembering where and when they lived in the historical context in Hawaii, especially in Hawaii, because I think, as we mentioned, there a lot of times our stories are discounted, especially for folks on the mainland or on the continent, rather. They feel sometimes that, for instance, as an Asian American, we don't represent the Asian Americans of the United States, believe it or not. This is what I get from people on the continent. And to me, it's really been frustrating to get recognition for the wonderful women in our history. So for instance, the collaboration I had with Craig on our Biography of Hawaii series, we tried to feature women that were very important during their time, but have been forgotten, or maybe very few people remember who they are, such as Auntie Maiki Ayu Lake, who was in a Kumahula, and Harriet Balslog, who was a labor attorney. And a lot of the laws that exist today, labor laws, are because of her hard work during the 40s and the 50s. And of course, Princess Ruth Ke'ulikalani, who was an inspiration for all of us, for her steadfast, in terms of her values and keeping, I think, an inspiration to Native Hawaiians today. So that's been sort of my journey in making sure, and it's been fun too. I mean, I have to admit, as a history buff rather, just learning about the history about these women, and you learn the history of Hawaii at the same time, that we just have a fascinating treasure trove of stories that a lot of times just don't get passed on. So Meleanna, you take it away.
Okay, so if you think about our beloved Hawaii and my beloved aunt, Auntie Irmgard, it was so easy for me to start with film, even though I didn't know what I was doing. So Joy, I have to say that anybody who wants to study this form, they really could, but if they didn't, then you could be crazy like me and think you can make a film and then go ahead and make it. So here's the deal. You have to have that passion, and you have to go, wow, these people are really important that I want to document. As my aunt, she was the glue that kept our families together because of her music, because of her great faith, because of her love of family. So when I think about making that film, as you with the women who are unsung in a way, Auntie Maiki Ayu, although not in the hula community, but how important it is to document. So people said to me, well, you've never made a film, what the heck? And I said, you're right, but I want to honor my aunt and our family and our traditions, what I grew up with. And then I said, well, you can't go wrong with Auntie Irmgard. Everybody knows her. It's okay they don't know me, because I'll just be the worker bee, as Joy, what this is all about. It's all about work and all about passion, most importantly. And I'm glad we have history in common, because I used to be a history, and still am very much a history buff. And so this helped me, my getting involved in film helped me to better understand myself, my story, our story, collectively, Ike Hawaii, Hawaii's story. And it brought me into what I do every day, which is teach. So I don't make films regularly, but the 4 films that I have made are all about Hawaiian culture, all about the best of who we are and how we are reliving and reclaiming our language and doing things to perpetuate the best of who we are. And the background also shows you, in terms of murals and teaching, it's all about what we're trying to do with our work or through our work is to heal, is to better understand who we are and the context of Hawaii and are being occupied and speaking truth to real issues. And I appreciate that I've had this opportunity to share today. Craig, I want to thank you all, and I want to thank my dear friend Vera and Shirley, because this kind of work just doesn't happen by itself. And we know the kind of commitment that you all have put into the work and into telling our collective stories. And it's not easy for us as filmmakers, because the last thing I want to do is stand here or sit here and talk, but it's important because it's also part of the mo'olelo, it's part of the ka'au, it's part of taking claim of the importance of culture and art, and then making sure other people who are listening understand and appreciate that unless we value our stories and value ourselves, no one else is going to. And that has been a very important message that I feel compelled to make, whether I'm behind the camera or in front of the camera. It's this message of relationship, character building, and community building. So mahalo for this opportunity, ladies and gentle sir.
Yes, yes. And I wanted to add that, you know, Vera and Shirley, what you've been doing is really establishing for us filmmakers, women filmmakers, a network of support. You know, when I was starting out, obviously there were very few women in this business. And that was one of the most difficult things, is not having that network of other women to support you, to have you there to, if you had a technical issue, if you had some kind of research issue, which documentarians also are challenged by, is just making sure that your facts are correct and that you know where to go, and especially in this community, because you have to maintain the trust of the people that you're documenting. And I mean, it's just a whole bunch of guys when we start out. And, you know, it's hard to break that barrier of getting, because it's a really highly technical field and there weren't that many women involved in it. And so the guys are sort of treating you like this interloper a lot of times into this field. Like, what does she think she's doing, right? She doesn't, how can she handle this? So I really appreciate what you two have been doing, because it's just wonderful to see the support that you folks have been reaching out to the young ladies in the community who have so much talent. I mean, I was so impressed by the crew that worked on the documentary that I was involved in, and the segment that I was involved in. So thank you also from my heart for that.
Yes, thank you, Joy, for saying that, because I really love, this is my favorite part about working on this series, is that we had always sort of envisioned that we were, yes, we were making films, but really what we were doing was building a family and a community of filmmakers who now all know each other and have these connections of having worked together, you know. So we're creating jobs, we're creating filmmaking jobs where young women who are part of the mentorship program that happens through Vera's organization, Hawaii Women in Filmmaking. So each director is paired with a young woman. And so when we hire the directors to make these films, they're being hired to, one, make a film, but they're also being hired to raise up a young woman filmmaker and mentor her through the process of making a film. And so by doing that, you know, we're giving them a real working film credit for doing real film work. We're teaching them the ropes. We're introducing them to the wider community. And then also all the women who are working as part of the production crew and as part of the post-production crew are getting to work with each other. And so, so we're creating these bonds, you know, through the experience of getting to work on these films together, so that, because it's all film work, is so much of it is the gig economy, right? It's like none of us, very few of us have full-time jobs. We're all just like, you know, 20 income streams to make up a year, you know? So you end up with, you know, kind of going from job to job, and you get each job because whoever you worked with said, oh, you know, you should call Mela, she's so great to work with, you know, or, you know, they just have a great experience with you and you get recommended. So if it's always the same set of, you know, the old boys club, you know, then young women have a really hard time breaking in, you know. So we decided to create a girls club, you know, to kind of create those opportunities and then foster that kind of interaction as well. And so, you know, it's each film is a little stone into the pond, and then it ripples out as concentric circles throughout our film community, through the entire film community.
And I want to add one thing, because this also speaks to the fact, you know, even as I am personally involved in this, I feel so inspired and continues to inspire, because, you know, hearing the story of John, for example, who's here, or hearing your story, Meleanna, Joy, and all the other Wāhine, I see myself, I feel represented, and I feel inspired, and I feel like, okay, I can do this. And so in fostering this intergenerational conversation with emerging filmmakers, you know, there is this way of saying, if you don't see it, you don't think you can become it, right? So we are also creating these memories, these experiences that we are thinking about our future generations, but also us in the present. We're really making a difference in a way that we approach the work. And it's a work that brings us a lot of joy. It's a lot of work, but it's a very joyous work, because we really are entirely committed to each other's success, to make sure that everybody feels supported. We are all learning together, you know, even in these 3 series. I cannot believe how we actually managed to finish a series 1 now that we are series 3. But what I was going to reiterate is really this feeling of being seen, represented, and especially inspired, like, you know, women that have done it, therefore I can do it too. And yeah, that was just, sorry, Meleanna, I wanted to make this just to acknowledge also how inspirational all of you are.
No, listen, there's nothing to be sorry about. It's only to celebrate that we're here. And, you know, life is interesting in Zoom. So I can just thank Zoom for a few things, and media in terms of digital, GPS. But I can tell you what I feel joy, and I'll speak for myself, but what I feel that we also represent is a continuum. Because the stories, if they don't get told and recorded, just like this wonderful, you know, biography center, if they aren't told, then people forget, you know. Then my Auntie Irmgard, people will wonder who wrote the song Puamana or Boy from Laupahoehoe. And for me, that isn't why I remember her. I remember her because of her loving, because of her caring, because of the relationship I had with her, and all the things that I was able to learn, to bring forward in my own life, to teach my own children. And, you know, girls clubs, I don't know about the club. I have a whole bunch of sisters, so I've never been without a girls club, but I can tell you, we all need each other. And I'm just going to share too that this sacred mountain, Mauna Kea Sacred Mountain, Sacred Conduct was so incredible for me, because as a Hawaiian who doesn't dance hula, for example, to be included and invited in by the Kanakaole Ohana, by the Halao Kekuhi is such a huge thing, because the more we include people in our work, and offer to them an understanding, wow, we are doing much greater work. You know, it's important to document. That's what Joy and I do. And it's also important for the work to invite others in, is what I'm thinking too, to share, because without us telling our own stories too, right? Who is going to tell them? Not nobody, perhaps. So that's why I really honor my colleague Joan Lander, for example, who is just extraordinary, because she actually inspired me to kind of want to do film. And I don't know if Joan knows that, but she and Puhi Pao, I have stories to share, but it's that desire to be part of community and to belong, to be a participant, to be productive. And that's what our young ones need to learn in today's world, is not what you're going to get from people, but how you're going to give and why you're going to give, because it's important to make a difference and be productive. I think that's what our work has done. I can speak for myself in terms of, it's been nothing but a huge joy. And as you said, Vera, a whole bunch of work, but that's a detail, you know. Thanks.
Yeah. And I think it's also important that, at least for my work and some of my colleagues, as with Craig and Victoria Newbold, who wrote a lot of the scripts that I worked on, you know, we try to also cover people's history, which is very important, because it's the people of Hawaii that are important. It's not the politicians, it's not the people in power. It's the ordinary immigrant. It's the people that worked in the cane fields and the pineapple fields that contributed so much to, you know, our economy, and they're largely forgotten. It's usually the people that we don't talk about because we forget to ask our grandmother or our grandparents the questions about, why did you come here? And, you know, how did you manage to survive? You know, the picture brides. Those are the people, the lost stories that I hope people continue to ask their parents what their stories are, and continue that tradition of oral histories, and to make sure that the people's voices are the ones that are heard and not just the folks in power.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And, you know, as I'm hearing you, these short documentary are only no longer than 9 minutes. So this is also, you know, there is so much more to tell. So we always think of them also as a way to tease the audiences, to learn more about the work that you do. And yes, just being a stepping stone to more.
I was going to jump in here just really quickly for two reasons. First of all, I think everybody listening here wants to know how they can see all the documentaries. So I just wanted to point, I think you put the link in there, right?
So the link that I put is actually the link to our website. And Shirley and I are happy to share that we actually have slated like a broadcast premiere with PBS Hawaii in March. And also the films have been acquired by Pacific Islanders in Communications, part of their Pacific Pulse. So they will be also streamed online through their YouTube channel. So yes, we premiered them to this past Hawaii International Film Festival, and it was actually quite a treat because we were one of the few in-person screenings. And yes, so there are opportunities to see them premiere with the premiere broadcast on PBS Hawaii, and then stream online through Pacific Islanders in Communications YouTube. Pacific.
Yeah, the season 1 and season 2 are actually on YouTube, and so you can watch the first 12 films right away. And I just put a link in the chat to a playlist on the Hawaii Women in Filmmaking YouTube channel that's got all 12 films stacked up neatly where everyone can see them. So that's you can see those films right away. And then really just in about a month, we're going to have a premiere, broadcast premiere on PBS Hawaii. So keep an eye out for that.
And the other thing I was just going to add in here is that Noel Kahanu, hello, Noel, has a question in here. Real Women has been so transformative for the field, but at the end of the day, it remains a man's world. Why is the industry so resistant to equity? Why do women remain the exception to the rule?
Great questions, Noel. Well, you know, as many systemic oppressive issues, it's always like a multi-layered answer. My very first answer to that questions is actually the industry, you know, it's economic power. You know, actually, originally the industry was actually women dominated, but as soon as it became a money-making industry, women were displaced and men took the lead. And so to a certain extent, it's like, you know, who likes the change when you're like, you know, it's all about profit mostly. And at the same time, that would be my first, you know, answer to the industry. So more than resistance is just kind of maintaining the status quo as much as possible, because that's where the profit comes, and that's you know, who will be interested in changing that if they are at the, you know, in the power position. That said, at the same time, I feel that sometimes it's also a question of, we are in a very interesting moment I believe, even the very fact that we are having these conversations maybe 10 years ago wasn't. So I do believe change happens, and we are making it. Even in an organization like Hawaii Women in Filmmaking, we are small and mighty. We are not only offering educational opportunities for young women to learn about films, but also we are discussing issues just like this. We're offering community screenings of films that address important issues. And most of all, we are making films. We have production services and productions that really make sure that women are involved in the industry and get paid for it. Because once again, that becomes the issues, like who's making money? If you look at the 200 top grossing films in Hollywood, only 25% of the creative roles were women. And what does that mean? And it doesn't tell us only the type of stories that we see, of course, but also who's making money. So that's why, they're actually ACLU of South California, actually by Maria Gies, sued the industry to make sure that there were actually there is a film that Shirley and I recently watched where, and it's not the first, of course, many topics were not totally new to us, but Brainwashed, the just premiere Sundance, really addressed these issues. And I think that there is a lot of power in talking about it, and raising awareness and paying attention to the credit and going to the movies when films by women are made, So I don't think it's going to change overnight, but the change is in the making. We are the change. We are making it.
Yeah, I mean, and it also speaks to who the gatekeepers are, that people who are at the top of all the industries who are funding, decide who gets funded and who gets access to funding, or it's overwhelmingly male. And so as long as that's your worldview, and that's what also needs to change is, as the gatekeepers become more equal, then that will create more opportunities for women as well.
Actually, when you're talking about being resistant to equity, what equity means is fairness. So oftentimes folks who do have power in whatever capacity, that could be a mother over her children, it could be a father over, his siblings, whatever. The point is, it's a fear factor of oh, if I give something, does that mean it gets taken away from me? And I think people need to know that unless we change the way we treat each other, and we have to invite, folks in and build relationships and trust, these things will never change. The resistance to equity is because people are afraid that if you give somebody a little bit of power, they might take it away from you. When in fact, that is not our nature. So it's important that people figure that out and go, wow, I have a relationship with this person. I trust them. I can work with them. So I think building trust is a building block to erasing some of that resistance to this notion of equity, because equity is something that could happen tomorrow if people understood it more. Yeah.
Yeah, and really latch on to those mentors that are supportive of you. I had male mentors that were very, giving, and there were few and far between, but the ones that did were so helpful when I was going up and through the business. And if you can find that mentor, stick with him or her, because it's so important, because they will tell you, they will provide those contacts for you. It's another network, in other words. And that's why the Hawaii Women in Filmmaking is so important. And, just stick to it, because if you have a passion for it, it will go a long way. Believe me, just be positive that you're going to succeed. That's the only way you can get through this. Your mental muscles have to be geared toward, you're going to get through this because this is what you want to do as a career. And I think it'll go a long way. I mean, there are a lot of roadblocks, but if you really feel that passion, and I think that's true of any profession that you aspire to, that you got to believe in yourself. And there's so many roles that you can play in this business. You may find, okay, I want to be a writer. Maybe that's just not your niche. That maybe you're a better editor or you're a better camera person. And it's just kind of just try out the different roles in this business. And you'll find your talent. Believe me, somehow it magically happens that you'll get that connection if you just believe in yourself, and you can get that support within the community.
And so I just got to brag about Joy, because she's actually stuck with one thing. And I really appreciate that, because I could, follow that good advice when I grow up, I think. So what's really important also is to know that if you're a creative in whatever endeavor, whether it's music, dance, it could be, a chef, it's the creativity that you bring into your work, and the passion and the desire to be in service and of service. Because I love to teach, and I love to make films, and I love to write, and I like to paint. So that's been a little bit of my interloper syndrome, because, although 4 films have been made and I want to finish another couple, it's important that people know that, like you say, Joy, that they find out what they like to do and what they don't like to do. And I'm still working on that part. But just know, Vera and Shirley, this opportunity to be present to each other as women working in a very creative, extraordinarily important industry really does matter. It matters. It matters that we're talking to each other today. It matters that the young ones can hear us. It matters that they can hear that it's not easy. Oh my God, it's not easy. So I think that's the exciting part. It's like a journey, and it continues to be one, and it's unending. Basically, we're just picking up the stitch from what happened before. My auntie did it with music. I'm doing it with film to honor her. And you've given us the privilege of being on screen and sharing our story, which I really thank you for. I'm a little embarrassed, but oh well, it's on screen and there it is. So thank you for that.
Yes.
I wanted to just jump in to point out that Kelly Hertha has offered what's not so much a question as a testimonial, but it should be heard. Your organization, Vera, allows young people a safe space to learn, and from that safe and educational space comes great creativity that empowers these young people to go out and be part of that change. Asking a male film teacher, after reading the syllabus only including male-created media, when female-made media will be included in the class, is a norm for our Hawaii Women in Filmmaking graduates. They demand of their professors that female, non-male projects are included and studied. This may not happen without your organization empowering these young people. One question I wanted to raise, and I would also encourage anybody to put questions in. One of them has to, they're related. The first one is if Mele and Joy, and if Joan, if she would like, could comment on what it was like to have the camera turned around and suddenly become a subject of the documentary. And one of the reasons I'm bringing that up is, and this is my testimonial, one of the things that really struck me about this series is how innovative and creative the various filmmakers are in actually presenting these documentaries. For example, I know, Mele, they got you to walk down by the beach. I know, Joy, that they actually put you in a space or an environment where basically all of the contents of your filmmaking were around, and Anne was photographing you moving around in those in the midst of the pandemic. So I was just wondering, one, what it felt like to be the subject, and number two, what did you notice about what happened to you as you become a subject by these really innovative and creative filmmakers?
Go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Well, the only reason why I agreed to do this was because I wanted to tell my 2 daughters, or explain to them in and someone else doing it what I actually do. I don't think they really care, to tell you the truth. It's kind of like what I was saying, you know, you need to talk to your parents about what their story was. So we each, you know, go through the, I think each generation kind of discounts their parents, so what they do in life. But anyway, it was daunting. I tell you, I'm somewhat of a control freak, and that's why I'm a director. So it was really hard for me to kind of sit there. I knew what they were doing. I pretty much could figure out what the intent was. But, you know, you talk for, I don't know, I must have talked for at least an hour with Ann Misawa, who was the director. And I'm thinking, okay, I have to come up with these really terse sound bites because I'm thinking like an editor, right? Which I am also. So I have to be brief, okay? But at the same time, how do I explain, you know, my story? So it was sort of like an internal battle because you know what they're looking for. But at the same time, after seeing it, right, I'm thinking, oh, why did they put this in? You know, why didn't they, you know, I thought this was important. So you're really at the mercy of the filmmaker. So I kind of got, you know, sort of, I guess, like this is what it, yeah, this is what it feels like when you're in front of the camera. So ha ha ha, right? So it was fun in that respect, and it's really weird to see you on camera, yourself on camera, and to hear yourself. And I'm going, oh, do I look like that? Do I sound like that? And so I very much appreciate. I mean, I always have, but I really even more so appreciate those folks that we convinced to be on camera in our documentaries.
Hey, Joan, you want to jump in here? I know you're there. If you do, just let us know. I just also want to share, as Joy said, it's you know too much and hope for too much. And then I have to give Erin a lot of credit for directing the piece that she did for me, Erin Lau. She did a great job. She also has an emotional thread in her work that's really important. So it was reflective very much of me, and I learned a lot. You know, it's like, wow, I should have done this when I did this. I mean, there's so many other things to learn that you forget in your own work. But I think there's a little bit of control issue for all of us, because we hope for something, and then reality is we are what we are. So I think, you know, it was humbling to be in front of a camera, because I would prefer being in a kitchen or behind a camera or doing things so that I don't have to, you know, stand out there or be the subject of. So I have to say that it is very humbling, but the work remains the same. We've got a lot of things to share. And whether it's in front or behind, a lot of the stories are for the work that we do, because our communities need us, and they need our stories. And it's all about the we. You can't make a film by yourself. Right, Joy? Right,
Yes,
Joy?
yes, yes. I think that's what people forget about, you know, this auteur theory that it's the one filmmaker. People forget that there's so many people involved. It's a real collaborative effort. I mean, the films I've done for the biography series with Craig and Vicki Newell, I could not do it without them. You know, they each had their own speciality and talent. And I think it made the documentary stronger to have those types of talents and just insight into the particular subject matter. So I think people need to understand that. And if you can find collaborators that you really trust, stick with them, because it really goes a long way. And once again, you know, it's a team effort, I believe. No matter what people tell you, you are dependent on your camera crew, your producers, your writers, your editors, the sound person. I mean, they can kill something if there's no good sound. You're in big trouble. And time is money in filmmaking, right? If you can't keep just doing this over and over again. So anyway, I just wanted to add that.
Yeah, we had a superb group of directors that worked on these films. So with Aaron Lau, who directed the Meleanna film, and Ann Misawa, who directed the Joy Chong-Stannard film, and then Heather Juni, who directed the Hinale Moana Wangkalu film. And then Vera and I each directed the other films. And what was great was that was sort of forming this hui of directors who were all sort of moving through the pre-production and then the production and then the post-production process together. We were able to kind of cross-pollinate as well. You know, it's like kind of like share ideas with each other and pull someone in and say, hey, do you want to take a look at something? So that was really, you know, an awesome part of this filmmaking process as well.
Oh, and I just want to add that John say basically everything that Meleanna and Joy went through. You know, we actually fly to Big Island. So, and you know, we were in COVID times. So there were a lot of things that we have to be very mindful for. So I can never say enough for how grateful I am that actually we managed to do these films, given the time that we are living in as well. So thank you all, you know, for saying yes.
Two things here. One, it can be opened up if, you know, no pressure, but Joan can be logged in on this to comment on this because she is one of the subjects. So we can do that if Joan's willing. And the other thing is I would encourage anybody who's attending at the moment to pose questions and comments to the people we have here.
Oh, well, I guess I should jump in.
Oh, good.
Hey, first of all, I want to mahalo everyone here. Everything you said is exactly what I wanted to say, so there's no need for me to go through it all too. But Vera and Shirley, I just admire you so much for what you're doing because, you know, as a documentary maker, I've always felt like I should be mentoring the younger people, especially the Wāhines, right? But I was always so busy producing, and then, you know, I mean, we did mentor here and there in an informal way, but to do it the way Vera is doing it now, I just mahalo you so much for doing that because it needs to be done, and people like me are shirking my responsibility. So mahalo, and also being on camera, yes, was very, very humbling. After getting all the B-roll footage, I told Vera, I said, don't use any of that in my segment.
I know, it's
vanity. It's all vanity. I know.
But all three of you have such storied careers. You know, you've done so much great work over so much time, and we have to try and boil that down to a 9-minute film. Right. So that's like such an enormous challenge. So I always like to think of this as, you know, this is only the first film about Joan Lander and the first film about Meleanna and Joy. And we absolutely encourage other makers, you know, to like do more of this kind of work, more.
And I want to turn the camera around back again. And I want both Shirley and Vera to respond to the question, what was it like knowing you were making a documentary about really, really established and accomplished documentary filmmakers?
Well, I don't, you know, I can only speak for myself. If I thought about that too much, I would get paralyzed, you know, and not be able to do this work. For me, it's about the mission, about really just, you know, saying, I love this filmmaker and I want everyone to know about this filmmaker's work. And so I'm just doing my little piece, you know, to tell the story from my point of view, you know, and I'm a film fan. You know, it's like I'm somebody who's just like a really great lover of film and really a great lover of films about Hawaii. And so I'm really approaching it from that standpoint and wanting to shine a light on someone whose work I really, really admire. And so you know, I have to kind of put aside any trepidation I might have about, you know, I don't try and compare myself to these filmmakers. They are all, you know, such storied and experienced makers themselves. But I do have a lot of curiosity about, you know, their creative process and wanting to learn more, you know, and wanting to share that with the greater audience.
Yeah, all Shirley said, and personally, I think the way I have approached, I mean, I've known John for a while, I've known Kimberly for a while, so I like to see it more as a conversation, so that it really take off the edge. And then I'm like a novel preparer, like I have all these questions already organized ahead of time of all the things. And then every single time I come to the spot and we are there, I just put them aside and I don't even remember what I wrote. And I just start a talk story. I think with John, I that's how I, you know, because yes, there are all these questions, but then we were like in the moment. So my approach is really to be as present and active listener that I can be, and also let the conversation go where it needs to go, where it wants to go on the moment. Sometimes I feel that that's, at least for me, the way it works best. As much as I'm one of those that try to be as prepared as possible, that literally all those questions that are printed out ended up being in the basket. Then I may end up asking some of them, but I can't look at the paper. I'm just looking at the person that I'm in conversation with and learning with them and asking questions as they come. And yes, but also what I really find important in it feels really that it's a relationship building. I'm not just going there, exploit the moment, like, yes, you tell me your story and that's it. You know, I like to see this as just yes, we are talking story, but it's a continuation, and there will be other things coming on, because, you know, as also Shirley was mentioning, then if other things happens, we are in each other emails or sharing other opportunities or way to collaborate. So somehow making this film becomes really just a windows or a way to, you know, to nurture this relationship, and sometimes making them stronger if we already have, or if they're new people, making new friends.
Yes, right.
And so there becomes love letters and friendship letters, you know, just to kind of like, you know, amplify and expand and support each other in this creative journey.
We have an appreciation and also a question. The first, this is from Maheshi. Mahalo for all you now, Wāhine, what you are doing. I, at 74, am finally hearing the mentoring, the cooperation, and supporting of all Wāhine in getting the stories told. But also, this is something I have dreamed about for so long, the shifting and balancing of our worldview and the inspiration and caring and sharing for all women. Thank you so much. And then from Noel Kahanu, do you folks think it's easier, harder, the same for women to break into movie making by making documentaries or narratives?
Well, I have a theory that documentary is a little easier, and I think it has to do with access to financing. That documentaries tend to be a lot of real scrappy endeavors, like Reel Wāhine. You know, it's like we make these beautiful films with like a little tiny bit of money. You know, we squeeze a penny, we really make it go far. And I think that because there's not a lot of money to be made, you know, it's like women are sort of allowed into that space. It's like what Vera was talking about earlier. It's like we don't have to like throw elbows as hard to get into a space where there's not as much money to be made. That's sad but true. And I think that the narrative space is way harder, you know, because it's more expensive in a lot of ways. You need, you know, bigger crews, and I think distribution is harder for the same reasons. And I think that women, you know, for example, Zoe Eisenberg, who I documented, is only the third woman to ever direct a narrative feature in Hawaii, ever. And so there are, you know, there were two other, you know, there were two, she was number 2, and there's a third one that came out in 2020. So it's really like, that to me is stunning, right? And it's not because women aren't trying, as she will say. So it's like there's lots of people out there pushing and pushing and pushing at those doors, and we're going to break those doors down. I swear to you, by hook or by crook, we're going to just keep working at it. But yeah, so that I think documentary is a little bit easier. Like I think there's more women gatekeepers in documentary, and I think there's also more venues like Hawaii Women in Filmmaking where we're creating opportunities more specifically for women to break in.
Yeah, but just know the stories are there, okay?
Oh, absolutely.
That's what's really encouraging to me. Those stories are there, whether documentary or narrative. And I think the problem for us oftentimes is we tend to think something is an either or situation. So if we get beyond that, I think great things can happen as we collaborate and continue to expand these kinds of conversations and work.
And as the genres start to merge, where you start using a lot of narrative devices to tell documentary stories and vice versa, right? Or documentary approaches to shooting a narrative. So in some cases, those distinctions, I think, become less important as we get, with more and more people having the tools in their hands to make films.
Yeah, and just to go back to the change question, I think that what we are trying to do is kind of like this two-pronged change strategy. In a certain sense, we are creating a space that it's an alternative space, it's independent, it has its own life, but it's not in isolation with what's actually the system and the structures that operate in the industry, because we talk about that as well. It's not that we are a little island, right? So what we are trying to do is, as we create this new space, we also make sure that there is a conversation with the industry locally, on the continent as well. Hawaii Women in Filmmaking as well is part of many other sister organizations. We are in conversation with Sundance and other, so it's also how you balance, right? So how do you disrupt internally, but also externally? So that's why, when the first questions by Noel is like, whoa, it's a complex issue, and we are trying to really enter and going through as many entry points as possible, because that's really how change happens. It's like all these nodes that needs to be leveraged. So creating, for example, in our youth, an experience that they will bring with them as they will be the decision maker of tomorrow, and therefore have something to refer back to because they have experienced something that is different from the status quo. So yeah, support us as much as you can, and let's make more films and help us doing that.
Amen to that.
Ew.
Yeah. It's my job to sort of bring this to an end.
Already?
Well, here's why. It used to be you have to end it by now because often the people on campus have to get to their next class. Now it's get to their next Zoom meeting, but it still happens anyway. So we do want to but thank you all so much for contributing to this. What I did want to do though is just ask Vera, because you've got so much you could talk about, but could you just talk a little bit about Hawaii Women in Filmmaking? Because the inspiration, I think the people watching would like to know about how you are engaging with the new generation, because you've got a lot of ambitious and talented high school kids that you're giving the opportunity to really get in and dream about this.
Mahalo for the opportunity. It's true, I can go on, and this is why I did share in the chat the mission statement of Hawaii Women in Filmmaking, because this nonprofit, place-based, that really advocates for women and girls telling their story through film with an intersectional lens. And on the website, you see, going back to the different strategies and entry points. So what we do offer educational programs for young women, such as Making Media That Matters and the Real Camp for Girls. Actually, we have now a Making Media Matters ongoing. And the model for that is we work with upcoming participants, but also some of them graduate and become mentors, and then becomes teachers, and then becomes our interns of productions. So this is also the model that we are fostering. So we make films about Women's by Women, just the Reel Wāhine of Hawai is the example. And also we really managed to create a way for women interested in film or women established in the industry already, really to connect, to find mentorship and support. And we do that through initiatives such as the Wāhine in Film Lab that will be actually coming to its second annual edition soon. So stay tuned for when the announcement would be. And the lab is really an incubator to help women filmmakers in narrative as well as in documentary come with film ideas that then through the mentorship and the webinar that we host, it becomes actually viable film project. But also we offer production services, therefore we can hire and pay people that want to do this as a job. And lastly, I also want to make sure that we also are the local producer of the Indie Lens pop-up, which is our ITVS Independent Lens initiatives, where we screen documentary films that address issues that affect all of our community. And so we have conversation through film about issues that affect us all. And the one that is coming up is actually on February 8th. And it's a part, and it's on women formerly incarcerated and what happens once they leave the prison behind. And so how is the society ready to reintegrate them? And so, yeah, I suggest you to visit our website, to subscribe to the newsletter, and thank you for listening. And I can always talk more. So do not hesitate to reach out to me. Yes, thank you, Shirley, for sharing. And I'm putting my own emails in the chat, just in case someone wants to continue the talk story offline.
And again, mahalo nui loa to all of you for what I'm sure everybody found interesting and useful and inspiring. And I hope we'll see you at future events. Remember, we'll be doing one of these every week all the way into April. And I think if you're interested in this one, you'll find that many of the others are interesting in parallel and suggestive ways. Mahalo.
Mahalo, Craig, Zoe, Paige.
Blessings, gratitudes. Take care, all.
Aloha.
See you soon. Aloha.